Here in France, what is seen as the most notorious rape trial to be ever held in this country, entering its closing stages. For nearly a decade, Gisele Pelicot was regularly drugged by her husband and offered up to strangers for sex. Since early September, her now ex-husband, Dominique Pelicot, and the other 50 men who he recruited online have been appearing in an Avignon court. Joining me on the set is the host of the 51%, Annette Young. Hello to you, Annette. You just came back from filming at the courthouse in Avignon for a special that's going to air later today. What was it like being there?
I have to say it was really an experience, and I've covered many court trials during my career, but there's something to be said about the particular nature of this case. I mean, of the 150 media outlets covering this court trial, 61 of them are international media organisations, which is not surprising because this story, as you and I know, Will, has dominated headlines from US to China. Again, just to remind the viewers, Dominique Pelicot having admitted guilt along with 14 of his co-defendants, the others denying the charges, claiming that they thought they were taking part in a sex game. And if convicted, Dominique Pelicot will emerge as one of the nation's worst ever sex offenders. Now, of course, by contrast, his ex-wife, Gisele, has become a global feminist icon, and especially given her bravery in waiving the right to remain anonymous, allowing those videos of her being assaulted to be made public in the court, and also telling the world that it's time for the shame to shift sides. I mean, the accused are sort of cross-section of middle and working class men. They include anything from firefighters, a nurse, a journalist, truck drivers. They're from 26 to 74. Most of them have children. Many are married or in committed relationships, and the court have heard from their family members and others, what a supposedly wonderful, kind individual they are. But I think for me, being there in the last few days, and what is so horrible about this incredibly sordid story is the very ordinariness of it all. You stand in the lobby of that Palais de Justice, courthouse in Avignon. You're surrounded by dozens of Gisele Pelicot supporters, other media colleagues, who are all there offering a guard of honour, if you like, as she exits the court every day. But amid the crowd are also the accused. Most of them will cover their faces with hoodies and masks, but some are not. And as a result, there is a part of you as a woman who, you cannot help but think as you stand in that lobby, who's the guy standing next to me? Is he one of those people? And I think this is why this story resonates so much, not only with French journalists and France in general, but the world.
Yeah, and we don't just want to find out what the verdict will be, but whether it changes anything afterwards here in France, society's views towards rape or how sexual assault victims are being treated.
Indeed. And one correspondent who's been covering this trial from the very beginning is Catherine Porter, a correspondent with the New York Times. And this is what she said when I asked her whether the need to add consent to the French laws surrounding rape is going to occur, because just to remind viewers that here in France there is no mention of consent in those rape laws, and this is what she told me.
It's odd because consent is not in the penal code, but it is in the courtroom every day. I've seen it as a strategy of defense in the cases I've covered, that the woman was always consenting, and it becomes word against word. There is a movement here in France to introduce it to the penal code, but I will say that there's a feminist resistance to that too. It's really hotly debated in France as to whether that is something that will actually improve the defense of women. It would certainly, if so, perhaps there would be an education that went along with it that is clearly needed. I think that there's a whole basket of changes that could be made, and we'll see what the political will is to do that.
And that's another issue emerging from this case, is how difficult it is for authorities to identify victims of a drug-induced sexual assault.
Indeed, and one thing that this horrendous story has publicised is actually the sheer number of such cases which are reported to authorities every year. Having said that, identifying cases of drug-induced sexual assault is incredibly difficult, but many here in France are calling for progress on the issue, as Olivia Salazar-Winspear reports.
For months, Gisele Pelicot suffered from bouts of amnesia, gynecological problems. She went to see doctors and neurologists in vain. None of these medical professionals suspected drug-induced sexual assault. Dr. Emmanuelle Piette has been working in women's protection services for more than 40 years. She admits that diagnosing such a case would have been extremely difficult.
I really don't know how they could have seen it. Seriously, a woman over 60 who reports problems sleeping, memory loss, you might think that's simply old age. You might ask her, is your husband nice to you? Are there any problems at home? And then she tells you, yeah, it's all fine. And because she said that, how do you make the link?
Drug-induced sexual assault is a blind spot for many medics. Some NGOs are starting to train professionals to understand what it is and how to recognise the symptoms.
We're talking about those famous blackouts, which can be total or partial, flashbacks as well, fragments of memories that you can't quite place. Things like being in a highly anxious state, feeling sleepy, neurological problems like vertigo, other symptoms like nausea and vomiting.
Annette, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing that special.